Hello and welcome to the YouTube channel for craftworld.eldar.com. I'm Brent, and in this video I am going to be talking about the big Aeldari reveal at the Warhammer World Championships earlier today. We got to see the sculpts for 4 new Phoenix Lord models, 3 new Aspect Warrior kits, and the cover for the upcoming previously announced Aeldari Codex, all of which is super exciting, not only because the models are absolutely gorgeous, they're fabulous, but also because they came with some additional information about the kits, which allows us to make some inferences about upcoming changes to the data cards. Most exciting for me personally, however, is that we learned the number of detachments that will appear in the upcoming codex, which is 8. Delightful. That was like best case scenario. 6 of which have been named in the reveal, which leaves us in a solid position to make inferences about the other 2. That said, I think most of you will be more excited about the long-anticipated arrival of a completely new Phoenix Lord. The Whispering Web, Lycus, I think, founder of the Warp Spiders. In this video, we'll take a look at each of the new kits and make guesses about the upcoming changes to the data cards, and then I'll run you through the 6 names of the detachments that we've been given and suggest some possible identities for the missing 2. Okay, so let's dive in with Fagen, or Fagen, for those of you who insist on that, and the new Fire Dragons. The new Fire Dragon Phoenix Lord model is absolutely gorgeous. We've seen it before. This one was spoiled earlier, and so then GW released the reveal for just this model. I think we can all agree that it's not only is it wildly better than the previous model that's now, I don't know, from the 90s, but just so dynamic and so beautiful. The Fire Dragons themselves also look really excellent. I think the Exarch with the Fire Pike is in more or less the same pose as the old Exarch with the Fire Pike and the pointing. The models, I think they're a little bit bigger. The detail's a little bit better. The guns are a little bit larger. The fins on their helmets are a little bit more dynamic. They're just a higher quality sculpt overall, I think. And some of you might be looking at the new Exarch model and saying, really, it looks an awful lot like the old squad. Is it really that different? And I had that thought about the Dark Reaper models when they released, when they got, I think that they might have been the first to get updated along with the Banshees. But if you put the old Reapers next to the new Reapers, the new ones really do look different and better, even though they're in similar positions. And I think the Fire Dragons go in the same bag here. There's a little note in the Warhammer community page that all of the new aspects have the opportunity to be sculpted either with or without helmets. If you run them all without helmets, presumably that's in a Ynnari war host, because the Ynnari don't wear helmets because they're all enthusiastic to die for the cause. A detail that I will discuss in my upcoming lore video. But from a rules perspective, most notably, there's a new build option for the Exarch. So historically, you've always been able to build Exarchs with either the bog standard weapon that the regular aspects from the squad have, and that's always been the wrong choice. And I'm not even sure they're going to allow that in the Codex. It looks like maybe they won't, because no mention is made of it here on the Warhammer community page. So instead, you have 2 other loadout options. The Fire Pike, or now there's a Fire Axe and Fusion Pistol. We're told that the Fire Axe is going to be a toned down version of what the Phoenix Lord carries around. And we already know how the Fusion Pistol works because Harlequins have it, and presumably it's going to be the same. That is a 6-inch range, hitting on 3s, strength 8, -4 AP, D3 damage, but with Melta 2. So similar to the Fusion gun, but D3 instead of D6 with Melta, but half the range. You've got to be within 3 inches to trigger Melta. And I'm guessing that the Fire Axe will be a pretty decent multi-damage melee weapon with some pretty good strength. I'm just going to go on record now as saying that I think, as cool as the axe and pistol combo looks, I think that barring some really amazing synergy with some melee stratagem or some new detachment ability that specifically benefits melee, my guess is most of us are still going to want to be running the Fire Pikes for the simple reason that The fire dragons are a shooting unit. You don't really want them to be in melee. That's sort of a bad state of affairs. And even though you're not really giving up too much damage output, if you're within 3 inches of a target, getting within 3 inches is a little bit tricksy. But who knows? Maybe there's going to be, for like the Aspect Warrior Warhost or something, some just stratagem that makes the damage output on melee weapons so amazing that it makes sense to think about running the squad with Fire Axe. Or maybe you're just a narrative player and you don't care and it just looks awesome. Objectively, it does look awesome. Okay, moving on. We have a new Ozman model, and it's very cool. It's beautiful. He doesn't have quite as much personality as I think any of the other Phoenix Lord sculpts so far, but I'm not sure Ozman has as much personality as the other Aspect Warrior Phoenix Lord sculpts that we've seen so far. So it's fine. I mean, it's certainly way better than what we have. The banner's super cool and dynamic. It's a beautiful model. And in some ways, even though I think it does look sort of rigid, for me, it vaguely reminds me in some sort of very general way of the art on the old 2nd edition codex. And so in that sense, I sort of feel like it's almost a throwback to the visual style of Aeldari from earlier editions, and I like that. Like the other Phoenix Lords that have just been resculpted, he's got the same loadout that he always had. But the fact that he has not shown up alongside reimagined Dire Avengers, I think is a pretty clear indication that we're not getting new Dire Avengers. And I'm fine with that. They're one of the newest of the old Aspect kits. And I kind of figured we weren't getting new ones when, I can't remember now if it was the beginning of 10th or back in 9th edition, when tournament rules called for Dire Avengers to all be updated to the same base size as the updated Aspect Warrior kits for tournament play, which I felt like was kind of an indication that we weren't getting new sculpts. But it was funny for a while because up until now, Ozman was actually on a smaller base than the squads that he led, which was weird. Okay, moving right along. There's a new Baharoth or Baharith and new Swooping Hawk models. Again, just gorgeous sculpt. Love the dynamism of it. The old Baharith metal sculpt had sort of like the flat metal wings that the like 2nd edition Exarch had, and just looked so much less dynamic than the squad that he led. I actually think of the old sculpt Phoenix Lords, he was arguably one of the better ones. But this new model is absolutely beautiful. I love the individual pinions and the little banner on his gun. He's gorgeous. And the new Swooping Hawks too. Swooping Hawks were the very first Aspect Warrior I ever bought as like a kid in middle school. And this is the 3rd iteration of the kit I've seen since I've been playing. And it's gorgeous. It blows the other ones totally out of the water. And also, it's clear that there are going to be 3 different loadout options for the Exarch, which is interesting. In addition to the not including like the regular Swooping Hawk weapon, which I think maybe those days are done and gone when you can even put the regular aspect weapon on the Exarch. The Exarch can take the traditional Las Blaster, we're accustomed to that, or a Scatter Laser, which presumably will have a maybe better range and maybe higher rate of fire, but no AP. The Las Blaster has always had AP. Scatter Lasers don't. Or a Power Sword, and what looks like in the sculpt, there's no mention of this in the text, but what looks like a pistol version of the Las Blaster weapon carried by the Swooping Hawks. Maybe it's the same weapon with 1 shot and shorter range. Maybe it has 2 shots but shorter range. Who knows? I actually think from a rules perspective, this is going to be a nerf to the Exarch, because previously you could give him both the Las Blaster and the Power Sword, which is a pretty awesome combo. In order to run it on the table, you either had to own one of the old sculpts or kit bash it, because the previously newest Swooping Hawk kit I don't think came with a Power Sword option. But it looks like no more Las Blaster Power Sword combo. You either get a decent melee weapon, but a bad shooting weapon, or your choice of 2 shooting weapons that are better than what the rest of the squad has. And I'm pretty sure we're all going to want either the Scatter Laser or the Las Blaster. I'm going to put my money right now on the Las Blaster. It's nice to have a few shots that have a little bit of AP coming in. And if the Las Blaster remains better than Strength 4, then against infantry, it's going to wound as much as the scatter laser, but it's just not going to have, well, I guess maybe not into stuff that's, we'll see. I don't know. Who knows what the relative strengths will be. I'm guessing that the Las Blaster is going to be the pick for the simple reason that you're generally not going to need the extra range on a scatter laser because the other weapons in the squad won't hit something 36 inches away. So being able to shoot the same thing that the rest of the squad shoots, but with the bonus of a little AP, I think is going to make that the most competitive build. But again, I'm just guessing. Who knows? We'll see. And again, maybe if there's some stratagem or detachment combo that makes aspect melee extra strong, then maybe, for example, in like a Belt's Hand build, you would want the power sword. We'll find out. We'll see what's going to happen. Okay, and then the new striking or Warp Spider Phoenix Lord. Wow, is this model gorgeous and so dynamic and so grimdark and so cool. I'm still not sure if it's Lycus or Lakis or any number of other possibilities. I'm sure there are already lots of people typing comments telling me why they know and why I'm wrong. Maybe you do know and I'm wrong. I don't know. But the model's gorgeous. And it seems to be an abbreviated version of the name that we already had for this Phoenix Lord as a possibility in lore. And we're told in the write-up about her that she has the ability to plunge herself into the warp time and again with utter fearlessness and a keen eye for navigation, jumping further and more accurately than even the most ancient of her exarchs, and always appearing in a crackle of warp lighting to deliver people from her doom. Now, this jumping more accurately thing raises some interesting questions. Is it possible that the way warp spiders work will change in the codex? Will they get nerfed a little bit in some way in terms of like how far they can go or where they can go? We don't have scatter dice anymore. Do you remember scatter dice, fellow old people? Oh, those were fun, if ridiculous. But I do wonder if this means that Warp Spider movement is going to change in some way, or the notion that she can do it time and time again. Maybe the like Bamf Warp Spider super jump is going to become a once per game thing, or maybe they'll get another ability that's once per game that she'll be able to do any number of times. Last possibility, maybe she just won't have to roll to take mortal wounds. Maybe that's all this means. Like Warp Spiders, when they make their extra long Bamf Nightcrawler move, roll a die, and on a 1 they take damage, they take a mortal, and maybe all this means is she doesn't have to do that. But in some way, she's better at moving around fast than the Warp Spiders. Her weapon loadout looks absolutely disgustingly fierce. So she has a, quote, unique pair of death spinners on 2 of her arms, and then she has 2 arms with a weapon that we're told is reminiscent of the infamous Harlequin's Kiss, a monofilament weapon, which used to be an incredibly, in earlier editions, it was like, now all the Harlequin weapons are the same, right, in terms of rules, but the Harlequin's Kiss used to be like arguably the most nasty. It was great. And we're told her most deadly weapon is her crackling sword, the Weave Render. Now, this suggests to me that she's probably going to be a true fusion shooting melee Phoenix Lord. Either those 2 death spinners are going to be 2 death spinners, so like 2d6 attacks probably, but with better stats than the regular death spinner, because we're told they're not normal. Like maybe they'll have AP, maybe it'll be a little bit of AP and +1 strength, or maybe it'll be the same number of shots but twin linked. But then it looks like maybe her strongest profile will be her melee. Again, with the 2 Harlequin's Kiss weapons, those are either going to be twin linked or they'll just be a bunch of attacks. And my guess is that those are going to be extra attacks if she's got this other melee weapon that is, really the killy one. So this might end up being a unit that makes a 24-inch move, drops down next to some enemy infantry, hoses them with either D6 twin linked or 2d6 auto hitting death spinner shots that have dev wounds on 6s, and then charges and has a bunch of really good melee, some extra attacks, and also some kind of badass relic sword. It's going to be interesting to see how they distinguish Baharith. I presume that Baharith's long-ranged weapons will be a bit better, and the range on this will be quite limited, but I guess the other possibility is that she'll just be a lot more expensive in the same way that Warp Spiders are a lot more expensive than Swooping Hawks. They sort of fill a similar role, but Warp Spiders are just kind of objectively maybe a little bit better at it, but also a bigger investment, so they're not really disposable. Maybe that's going to be the balancing mechanic. But she looks like she could potentially be really, really good, because the problem that Phoenix Lords tend to run into has to do with mobility and durability relative to their points and damage dealing. So like Fagen's popular because he just gets up after he dies. Karandros was popular earlier in the edition because coming out of a Falcon with the various combinations of keywords, he could be just absolutely murderous. And then some of the other ones were struggling a bit. But I think this combination of like mobility and potentially like triple damage output might make her a very playable competitive character. But obviously we'll see. Who knows? It's all just conjecture. Okay, and then the new Warp Spider models, they're cool. They look really cool. I will confess that of the new Aspect Warrior reveals, these are, to my eye, the least dynamic. I like the crackling energy on the Phoenix Lord jumping out of the warp in between place. I think it would have been cool to have some of that dynamism in the regular Warp Spider models too, but that's fine. They look great. And the old sculpts are so old. They're, so I mean, we can't complain. And I like that the Exarch, there's several different helmet options for the Exarch. One with like a spider eye effect, which is kind of neat, although I don't think it's going to be the one I go for, but they look great. There's no question that they look great. And then there's 3 different builds for the Exarch. It's not really talked about very much in the description, but we can see just looking that there's an option to build the Exarch with no shooting at all, just with 4 power blades. I'm going to guess that that's going to be like an extra attack mechanic or a twin-linked mechanic with just a lot of attacks. Another option is going to be the Warp Spider Exarch that we've been running with the extra Death Spinner and the Power Blades. That'll probably be pretty similar. Or you could build an incredibly shooty Warp Spider Exarch, which has 2 Death Spinners and some kind of like super Death Spinner weapon that looks amazing. And I am going to guess right now that probably, if I had to put money on it, we're going to want the super shooty Warp Spider for the same reason that you want the shooty Fire Dragon. And that is, Warp Spiders just don't really want to be in melee. In this last edition, like sometimes the Power Blades on the Exarch, sometimes it made sense to charge in to like finish something off. But certainly in the first part of 10th edition, if I had had a choice between the Power Blades on my Exarch or the double Death Spinners and an even better super Death Spinner, I definitely would have been taking that. But it could be the case that part of what happens here is like if you're running the Warp Spiders with the Warp Spider Exarch, like if she's going to lead the squad, now it makes sense because she wants to multi-class into melee. Now it makes sense to maybe think about running the Exarch just with like all of the blades or the 2 Death Spinners and the blades, because you're planning to use the squad as a true hybrid squad. So maybe that's the angle. It's like what if you're thinking from a competitive perspective, what you run is sort of going to depend on whether or not they're running with the Phoenix Lord or not. Okay, so that's it for the new models. Super exciting, gorgeous work. Thank you, Games Workshop, for updating our Phoenix Lords and our Aspect Warriors. We've been waiting so long. I'm especially excited about the Phoenix Lords. Like the Aspect Warriors are great. To be honest, I wasn't unhappy, especially with the old kits. I mean, some of you are typing angry comments. They were really old. I get it. They were really old. But like I liked looking at them on the table. I never looked at my elves and thought, boy, my elves sure don't look cool enough. But wow, the Phoenix Lords really do just take it to another level. I like how big they are. I like that they really are heroic model centerpieces in a way that the old sculpts just aren't, which is fine. They were good for their time. But to be fair, their time was back when most people weren't on the internet and the X-Files was the hottest show on television, and that was quite a while ago. Okay, so let's talk about the detachments and the codex itself. The book looks beautiful. It looks thick, which is appropriate for a book that's going to cover presumably a lot of subfactions also. Because based on what we've been told inside, it looks like neither Ynnari nor Harlequins will be getting their own separate supplement book. And there was some speculation that maybe they would. But it doesn't look that way because here's what we know. So we know 8 detachments. One will be the Warhost detachment, the one that we have now. And it simply says it'll include the all-around warhost detachment. That term all-around, I think, might matter for reasons we'll get to in a minute. And more specialized formations such as the Seer Council, which is obviously Ulthway, right? If you're going to double down on Psychers and Warlocks supporting your stuff. The Wind Rider host, we all know who that is. Samhan, special rules for bikes and whatnot. The Harlequins Ghosts of the Webway. And it's interesting that they specified the Harlequins Ghosts of the Webway because we might have thought Eandon, right? But no. So there's a Harlequin detachment. The Devoted of Ennead or Ennead or Ennead, obviously Ynnari, and then the Aspect Host detachment, which clearly, of course, is going to be BL10, and we're told in which the new Aspect Warriors deploy in the terrifying shadow of the Avatar of Cain. So also good for the Avatar. I assume that turn of phrase doesn't mean that the Avatar is being limited to this one detachment. That would be very disappointing. I don't think it will. I doubt that, but you certainly could read it that way. Let's hope that's not the case. So I think it's a safe bet that there will be a detachment for every craft world, every one of the 5 major craft worlds. Of course there will. And now we know that there's going to be one for Harlequins and one for Ynnari, which means that there are 2 missing. Now, one of them is obviously Eandon. So we have the 6th that we've been told about, plus Eandon as a 7th. And then there's some other possibilities for the 8th one, and it depends a little bit on what Warhost actually means. One possibility is that the Warhost detachment will turn out to be the Aletok detachment. And I said when I made my what I'm hoping for in the Codex video that I thought there was a strong likelihood that it would be the Biel-Tan detachment, the Warhost detachment. I'm clearly wrong about that because it's an Aspect Warrior detachment. A lot of people suggested that the second most popular guess was, or maybe even more popular, was that it would be Ulthway, but clearly not because there's a Seer Council detachment. There was one person who said, no, I think Warhost is Aletok because of Fire and Fate and Phantasm, which makes sense. Whoever you are out there, maybe you were right. And if so, well done you. And if it is Aletok, then that means that the missing 8th one could be Corsairs, which would be really exciting. And in order to have a Corsair detachment, we would need, I think, some more models. At the very least, we would need a transport, and maybe that's coming. The craziest possibility is that it's Exodites, the dragon-riding maiden world Aeldari. I did hear a rumor a couple years ago from a credible human who used to be in real deep at Games Workshop that this was in the works. But on the other hand, those rumors have existed all the way back to 2nd edition, and there's so many other models coming out that it just doesn't seem... It would be weird for them to start Exodites after having kind of started Corsairs but not finishing Corsairs. We would all be very excited if that's the thing, but I honestly think it's the least likely. So here's the other possibility, and what I think might actually be the most likely, is that actually the 8th one is Aletok, and that Warhost is not Aletok, and what Warhost is a catch-all for all the minor craft worlds. So you'd have like one detachment for each of the major craft worlds, and then you'd have the catch-all for the minor craft worlds, and then you'd have Mono Harlequins and Ynnari. And just to be clear, I have absolutely no idea. As far as I know, Games Workshop does not even know that this channel exists. That insider I talked to has nothing to do with my channel. It's just somebody that I met socially at one point. And he had also been out of the whole Games Workshop game for over 15 years. So, maybe who knows what he really knows. But it sure is fun to speculate. And I think that, as I said, I would put my money on what I just said, that the missing one is actually just Aletok. But regardless, I think that this reveal is really exciting. I love all the new models. Frankly, if this is the entirety of the range refresh that we get in this edition, I'd be content with one exception, and that is that we obviously need a new Karen Dross model. I think that it would be incredibly bizarre if they updated all of the Phoenix Lords except Karen Dross, especially when the Striking Scorpions have already gotten a refresh. I was pretty sure that he would be next before Fagen was announced, or Fagen, just because the aspect warriors are out, but apparently no. And again, maybe that was just because of the accidental leak. Somebody was inadvertently sent a picture of the model in another kit in the UK, and it ended up online, and then they had to release pictures of the model. But I have to think that Karen's getting updated too, and that implies that we will also get further updates to the range in this edition. This is a whole lot of stuff, and I might be in the minority with this, but the vast majority of the models just I don't really mind. I think most of the vehicles look great. I don't mind that they're old. I think the Vipers look a little bit dated, but I'm fine with the regular tank chassis. I think the Wraiths look great. I know they're old models. I think they look good. I do think that some of the best value for money for Games Workshop and updating a kit would be to do the basic Harlequin troop, because people, when people run Harlequins, they can build them different ways, and they own so many Harlequins, and updating that box sure would be great. I'm not chomping at the bit for this one for the simple reason that I own a ton of Harlequins, and then the notion of having like my entire Harlequin, I think they look cool, and having them all suddenly out of date would be, it's sort of a double-edged sword when a particular kit gets updated in some sense. That's a little bit silly to say because nothing stops us from playing with our own old models, but nevertheless, I think it would be tactically sensible for Games Workshop to update the Harlequin kit, but I'm sort of fine either way. And the only other thing that I think we really need, I think Corsairs need a transport to really do what they want to do. I mean, they're Corsairs. They're pirates. They should be able to pirate around in some kind of little sailing ship. But overall, all of this is super cool. I don't think we really have anything to complain about in terms of getting a range refresh. And that said, there's nothing to say that we won't get some new models. A new Foot Farseer wouldn't be the worst thing. The new Foot Warlocks look great. I'm kind of surprised we haven't seen a new Foot Farseer yet. So we may see some more stuff for sure. But even if we don't, I think this is great. If you have your own ideas on the today's reveal, please leave those in the comments below. If you just want to say, wow, I sure am excited, go ahead and say, wow, I sure am excited. And if you're interested in discussing this in an elaborate back and forth with a wonderful community of Aeldari loving, loyal channel watchers, if you become a patron at $3 a month, you could join my Discord, and we're going to be talking about all of this stuff over there a lot, I'm sure. And I will link that in the video description. I'll be back again in a few days next week with an enormous lore video drop that has just been a leviathan of a project. So if you're a new player considering getting into Space Elves, or you recently got into Space Elves and you're looking for all the lore in one place wild ride, it's coming soon. Okay, that's what I've got. Back again soon. Thanks so much. Until next time, best of luck in your next campaign. Bye.